Rocky 99. Along with Conemaugh Health System and the Cambria County Drug Coalition, we continue the fight against the drug addiction in our area. And this is another Hearts Against Heroin interview presented by Conemaugh Health System. Today, we have a special guest, Melody Ray. She's a volunteer coordinator, grief specialist at the Healing Patch in Ebensburg and Altoona. Now, what the Healing Patch is, it's an outreach of home nursing agency where they give support to kids and families that obviously are dealing with grief, is what happens, Melody, right?
Correct.
As we've seen the whole progression of the opioid epidemic, you're no doubt seeing more and more grief due to drugs.
Yes. A lot more families are calling, looking for services, yes.
Tell me a little bit of some of the things that you guys work on when you're dealing with kids and losing someone to drugs.
Families call and they're looking for support. How do I talk to my child about this? How do I communicate this to them? A lot of families are really struggling with it themselves, of really wrapping their minds around the idea that they lost a loved one to a substance overdose.
So how do you transmit that to a child, right?
If they can't even kind of grasp that, how do they talk to the kids? And then there's a lot of fear. What do I tell them? Can the kids really handle this type of information? So what we have found, and a lot of people in the grief field, really that honesty is really the best way to go. So it's really families trying to find the right language for that.
Now, your daughter's here. She came with you to the interview. Have you talked to her about things like that yourself? Because I've done the same thing with my son, to an extent of certain things, of course, but he knows what drugs are.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
We have to be honest.
Right. And it's really about understanding not only the choices people make, but that once people start down that path, their brains get addicted. And once that addiction starts, it starts saying, take me, and the lack of control then starts. So it's really kind of having those conversations early, absolutely.
One of the big things, I'm sure, is to allow the child to get it out in the open so they don't then have something themselves.
When families are calling, we kind of talk to them about maybe the language to use. They're saying, do we tell them? And like we say yes. Well, how do you explain this? And so we really kind of explain it in a way that's very matter of fact. For example, your dad took too much of a medicine or a drug and it made his body stop working and he died. That very simple terminology is really, really hard to say. But what we found is when people just say your dad passed away and use euphemisms that are really confusing to kids and make things more difficult, that they start to maybe in their minds think maybe they did something, maybe they had some role to play, some cause. So it's really kind of laying that foundation as to how the person had passed to kind of get that communication out there.
With some of what I've been doing with the Hearts Against Heroin, if anything else, I believe now more than ever, mental health is priority for all of us, and probably nipping that in the bud, so to speak, when it comes to a young child when something like that happens is definitely paramount.
Absolutely. So whenever kids aren't part of that grieving process, it's not explained to them about their loved one died. A lot of times that grief will manifest in mental health issues, in behavioral problems at school, and they may even show physical symptoms of illness and whatnot.
And then you have the whole cycle all over again.
Then also, a lot of times they do find out anyway. So if the family is trying to keep it a secret, per se, kids hear. They overhear the adults on the phone, or an older cousin or a kid at school says to them, your mom, your dad, your uncle, they died from a drug overdose.
Right.
Whereas in their own home, that's not being communicated. And they get a lot of anger. And then on top of that, a lot of shame. Because if this is something I can't even talk about, what a shameful thing of how my loved one died, that we can't even communicate that at home. That's where the mental health, like you said, Bubba, really starts to manifest. And it's a downhill spiral from there potentially until those things start to be communicated open and honestly within the family.
Your bottom line is be open and honest.
Absolutely. And if you need help with that, call us. Because it's going to be the hardest conversation families have. And that's where we're there for them during that really, really difficult time of how do I communicate this? And what we really say, it's about providing honest information in small pieces to kids. And it doesn't mean you kind of explain every detail all up front. But to very matter of fact say your loved one took too much of a medicine or drug and it made their body stop working and they died. I think all of us kind of start there. And then as the kids get older, starting to have those conversations about what leads to substance use, whether it was a coping skill for their own loved one's physical pain or mental health illness. It kind of lays that foundation, whereas if it started as a lie as far as the cause of the death, then people are backtracking. And what kids have sometimes said is that they feel like they have to re-grieve that person. They thought they lost someone to a totally different reason. Now they're finding out the truth many years later. But it's so difficult and such a hard conversation to have. And we at the Healing Patch really recognize with families, no one teaches us this stuff. Nobody teaches us how to explain this stuff to our kids that is horrific. But what we do find is that the more we kind of hide from it and won't talk about it, it becomes such a heavy weight, not only for the kids, but also the adults.
Hearts Against Heroin, presented by Conemaugh Health System, along with Spangler Subaru, S&T Bank, Walnut Medical on Rocky 99.
The Laurel Highlands Rock Station, Rocky 99.